is Black Writers Read. Evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today for episode 27 of season 6 of Black Writers Read. My name is Nicole Young Martin, and I'm the founder, producer, and host of this series. I am so confident that tonight's conversation is going to be beneficial to both readers and writers. The book featured on tonight's episode is so skillfully written with brilliant dialogue woven into a well-crafted narrative. The exposition, and I was saying this to our guest off air, the exposition is so slick, and the characters, it felt like I was traveling with them throughout the story. Many of you will be familiar with tonight's guest, as she's been on a previous episode of Black Writers Read, and she's a fellow podcaster serving as the producer and host of another Black literary podcast, Black and Published. Also, folks, speaking of Black and Published, please take an opportunity as you're reading The Seven Daughters of Dupree, which is the book that we're going to have on tonight. Please listen to, I believe it's the first 6 episodes of season 6 of Black and Published, where Nikesha goes into detail talking about the book. I believe she has a conversation with her agent, the publisher, and things like that. So please be sure to check it out. It's Black and Published. So much to chat about, so let's go ahead and get started. Black Writers Read showcases, celebrates, and honors the words, work, and traditions of Black writers from across the country, across genres, across experiences, and across the African diaspora. Black Writers Read is a behind-the-scenes conversation into the craft and what it means to create as a Black author in today's society. Since starting the series on Juneteenth in 2020, we've hosted over 100 writers representing over 20 genres from 6 countries and 28 states. Our platform includes live stream interviews, audio podcasts, book clubs, and curriculum integration assistance. Find us online at blackwritersread.com. Today, we welcome back Nikesha Elise Williams. Nikesha Elise Williams is a 2-time Emmy Award-winning producer and award-winning author and producer and host of the Black and Published podcast. A narrative strategist by day and journalist always, her writing has appeared in The Washington Post, The Bitter Southerner, Essence, and Vox. Nikesha's work has been supported by the Kimbilio Fiction Fellowship, the DeGroot Foundation, and the Tin House Summer Workshop. A Chicago native, fellow Midwesterner, I'm from Detroit, she lives in Florida with her family. Today, we'll be talking about her latest work with such a beautiful cover, The Seven Daughters of Dupree. It's 1995, and 14-year-old Tati is determined to uncover the identity of her father. But her mother, Nadia, keeps her secrets close, while her grandmother, Gladys, remains silent about the family's past, including why she left Land's End, Alabama in 1953. And Tati digs deeper. She uncovers a legacy of family secrets where every generation of Dupree women has passed more questions than answers. From Juby in 1917, whose attempt to pass for white ends when she gives birth to Ruby, to Ruby's fiery lust for Samson in 1934 that leads to a baby of her own, to the night in 1980 that changed Nadia's future forever. The Dupree women carry the weight of their heritage, bound by a mysterious malediction that means they will only give birth to daughters. The Dupree women confront a legacy of pain, resilience, and survival that began with an enslaved ancestor who risked everything for freedom. The Seven Daughters of Dupree masterfully weaves together themes of generational trauma, Black women's resilience, and an unbreakable familial bond. Echoing the literary power of the 12 Tribes of Haiti by Ayanna Mathis, Nikesha Elise Williams delivers a feminist literary fiction that explores the ripple effects of actions, secrets, and love through 7 generations of Black women. The Seven Daughters of Dupree was released in January of 2026 and published by Scout Press, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Just on record, I want to mention this is Nikesha's 8th book. Find Nikesha online at www.newrights.com. Throughout our time together, I'll be sharing this information on how you can find her and also Black and Published online. For those of you who are new to Black Writers Read, here's the format. Nikesha will read an excerpt from the Seven Daughters of Dupree, then we'll chat. I will monitor the comment section from the platform that you are joining us from today. Please, if you have kudos, congratulations, flowers, questions for our author, please drop them in the comment section where you are joining us from today. I will monitor and either insert them during our conversation or hold them towards the end. I'd now like to welcome back to the virtual stage Nikesha Elise Williams. Hello.
Hey.
Yes, I had to, from a lot of the interviews that I've watched of you preparing for tonight, I had to make sure I inserted. This is your first book with the big five, but this is your eighth book because I keep hearing debut author, and I'm like, this is not her first book.
The marketing of it all.
I was like, I was like, yes, congratulations on getting a big five, but you've been at this for a minute.
For a good minute. It's been a long time.
Yes, and the writing in the book is so slick, and it really, I think it really, really pulls attention to just the arc of your writing. And I hope that you've had an opportunity to celebrate yourself, pat yourself on the back, and congratulate yourself because the writing, oh my God, it's so slick. So I cannot wait for you to read.
Thank you. I have never had anyone describe it that way, so I'll take it. I do like that you think it's slick. That I love that. Have I had a chance to celebrate myself? We won't dwell on that, okay?
Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to you to read, and I'll be back for our interview. So happy reading.
All right, so I'm going to read from the prologue and a little bit from chapter 1. Here we go. Prologue. They cut off her head because she ran, but who could know? Certainly not Tati. She was looking for her daddy. Her mama, Nadia, wouldn't tell her. Gladys, her Mimi, wouldn't tell her either. So she searched for him. She didn't know to search for anyone else. It wasn't like there was a burial or body, no coffin, no cemetery. But in a way, she found her. In fact, she found them all, including her daddy. In the kitchen table whisperings and the basement murmurings, where her mother used a hot comb to press out her hair every Saturday night. Part 1, Questions. March 1995. The noxious scent of burnt hair and relaxer cold-cocked Tati with a closed fist, singeing her nose hairs as she made her way into the basement. A yellow neon sign that read Nadia's Nubian Salon hung on the wall of the landing, led the way for customers who entered through the back door. Not that Mimi ever came that way. She insisted on coming through the front. As soon as she crossed the threshold, her eyes roamed as her gloved hands swiped across furniture that was neither dusted nor polished, and her feet traversed the floor that wasn't mopped. For the unwashed dishes in the sink, she shook her head and kissed her teeth. Behind the heavy basement door, Mary J. Blige's My Life album provided the soundtrack for the Sunday morning appointment. Nadia sang along in her own version of praise and worship. She didn't abide no gospel. And since all the R&B stations got holy from 7 to noon, Nadia was her own DJ, despite Mimi's misgivings. The elder woman never said anything. The only indication of her displeasure was the turned corners of her lips, which made her face look as if she were sucking on something sour. She knew that if she wanted to get her hair done, music was Nadia's non-negotiable, especially Mary. It was Nadia's third copy of the CD. She had played the other two out so much they skipped. At least that's what she said. But Tati knew dropping hair grease, spritz, and holding spray on the disc didn't help the scratches none either. Tati retrieved the broom, hidden behind the sliding gray door that separated the laundry room from the rest of the salon, and swept the perimeter. She moved between the 2 wash bowls along the right wall and the 3 dryers on the left before she treaded through the middle, where Mimi was enthroned in the client chair. The curling iron hissed in Nadia's hand. All of her Soft Sheen and Dudley's products, along with rollers, curlers, and irons of different widths, were in arm's reach on shelves that butted up against the basement wall below a second flickering yellow Nadia's Nubian Salon sign. Tati, Stop standing there like a dazed deer and help me, Nadia snapped. What you want me to do? Damn it, Tati, help. Finish sweeping, clean out the wash bowl, pick up Mimi's towel that fell to the ground and put it in the basket. I know your eyes good because we just got them checked. You need to put them to use and earn your keep after all the money I'm spending on you for your little birthday. Nadia, that's not right, Mimi said. What you mean that's not right? Nadia asked, exasperated. Yesterday, we did the movies and dinner at the Cheesecake Factory with Toya and Desiree on top of shopping at the Water Tower place. And she sprung her class trip on me at the last minute. Shit. I had to give her a post-dated check. She lucky I don't make her little ass go get a work permit to go bag groceries at Jules. Earning her keep is the least she could do. Ain't that what you told me when I was little? I told you a lot of things when you was little. It don't mean I was right. It worked for me. I turned out all right. And we want Tati to be better than all right. Mimi turned in her seat and glared at Nadia, who only rolled her eyes and clicked the curlers. A direction and a threat. Turn around before you get burned. Mimi huffed, then faced forward. Tati, where's Desiree anyway? Nadia asked. Upstairs sleeping. She spent the night? Mimi asked. First time since we were 12, Tati answered excitedly. And she still asleep while you working with your mama? Tati shrugged. Desiree had been her best friend for years, and she'd never known her to be a morning person. She was always late, and they were bused to school. The mornings Desiree didn't miss the bus completely, the driver waited on the corner at 65th and Green for her to come out. Sometimes the driver would even go around the block and pull up to Desiree's front door after Tati had pointed it out, and beep the horn to encourage her to hurry up. Sometimes she made it, sometimes she didn't. When Nadia had yelled up the stairs for Tati to come help, Desiree didn't move, and Tati didn't make her. She secretly hoped she could get through Mimi's appointment with Desiree being none the wiser. Mimi asked, Tati, how old you is now? 14, she answered. Your mama told me you got your first monthly yesterday. Dang, Ma. Ain't no secrets in this house, Nadia said. Oh, yeah, there are. But that's what you get for rutting around with a married man. And I'll stop there.
Ah, I like speaking things into existence, and I'm like, I'm seeing a color purple-esque future for this book. Musical optioning, movie optioning.
From your lips to God's ears, okay?
Like,
Jesus, are you listening?
yes! Because one of the things I love about the dialogue is that each character, excuse me, has such a distinct voice and mannerisms and personality. Like you hear it from their inflections and everything. And I'm just like, yo, like, oh, my co-host is barking. So I really hope that people are like people in the industry, film and television, all that are reading this because I do see a really good future for this book.
Thank you.
And I love how my cough is back. So I have a couple of questions for you. So the first question that I have for you is, Nikesha, is what is the origin story of the Seven Daughters of Dupree? Why this title? And why this book right now? Yes.
I'm going to go at it backwards. Why this book right now? Because baby was trying to get on. I started the book for a contest in 2021. You know that already because if you've listened to the other episodes, you know how this book came about. Like you said, even though this is being positioned as my debut novel as with a big 5 publisher, it is my 8th book. But everything prior to that was either self-published or with a small university press. Which that's when I was with you. The last time was for the Mardi Gras Indians book, which was published by LSU Press in 2022. And so I was trying to always get to this level that I wanted to be at since I self-published my first book in 2017. And so I saw this contest for Gallery Books in like late May of 2021. Send us 25 pages. The winner gets a $50,000 contract. And I thought, oh, I can do that. And so I had this idea. I had 2 ideas at the time, and I couldn't decide which one. I talked to a friend, and I ended up on this one, which was, and it was very simple. A girl who doesn't know her father, and she finds him at the end. That's still basically what happens, right? And so I started working on that. That basement beauty shop scene with Gladys and Mimi and Nadia was always there. It was always chapter one. And so that's where it started. I wrote these 25 pages between June 2nd and June 9th because I was also pregnant at the time because, I don't have enough to do. Um, Wrote these 25 pages on June, finished them by June 9th, go to the hospital on the 10th. My daughter is born on the 11th. I get back home on the 13th. I put the baby in the pack and play. I sit down on the chaise, still in my like hospital clothing, stitches, adult disposable diapers, all the things, right? Read over the 25 pages, send them in for the contest because the deadline was the 14th. And I'm like, I'm so proud of myself. I didn't submit it for this contest. And then I think days later, if you're a finalist, they're going to want to see a whole manuscript. And that's when I was like, maybe this is too much. But with a newborn, I wrote the entire first draft of what became the Seven Daughters of Dupree between June and the end of August in 2021, only to not win the contest. But I had a book. Didn't win the contest, still had a book. It's a silver lining. I promise it was a great thing. And so I had this manuscript, and I queried it too early initially because I was like, let me see if an agent can help me navigate my own craziness, because it was the character Gladys was lingering. Because there's a line in the novel that's still in the final version, but there was a line in the first draft as well that's in part 3 in the Thanksgiving scene where Gladys says something like, what do you think happens to light-skinned women in the South? And when I'm writing, I'm just writing. And so I write the line and I write past it and I finish the first draft. And then I said, what happened to Gladys? And so she was lingering, and I asked myself that question. And then I get this vision of this woman in this white dress walking down this dirt road with these shoes in her hand. And I'm like, okay, that's Gladys. Where's she going? The vision got a little wider and I see what was behind her. And I said, oh, okay, I know what happens. But it still hadn't clicked into place yet. And it didn't click until I heard my friend and fellow author, Nikesha Elise, talking about a workshop that she teaches. It's about writing your best first line. And I asked myself, what would my best first line be? And then that's when I got the line, they cut off her head because she ran. And in that one line, I knew I had an enslaved ancestor. I knew why she was going to be beheaded. I knew the how. I knew everything in like that one sentence, like the entire generational story just like hit me. So I went from Tati to Nadia to Gladys to an enslaved ancestor. So that's 4. And I was like, well, we got to bridge the gap between Gladys and the enslaved ancestor. And so I was like, okay, my mind goes to church. 7 is the number of completion, 7 women, 7 generations. And so then I just kind of fill in the blanks. And that started by asking their names, like, who are you? And so then Emma, Juby, and Ruby showed up. And then my next questions were like, well, what are your issues? Because that's how I was thinking about their storylines and their arcs. Like, what are the turning points in their lives where you see them completely change from one way to the other? And over like 6 months of thinking through these different plot points and their turning points for each of these women, it all came together. And then I wrote the second draft between May and October of 2022. So that's how we got to the 7 Daughters. The title itself is not the original title. The original title was Hot Combs on a Saturday Night. So for everyone that picks up on the theme of hair in the book and why it runs through every generation, and I focus on it so heavily, is because I was writing toward that title. So even though that's not the title anymore, that's why that theme is there. And it was also the reason why, with the enslaved ancestor and why she, in her storyline, my question became, knowing what happens to her, how would she feel knowing that Nadia was a beautician in the present day? Like, how would she feel about like that career choice, right? And how would her family feel? And so that's why hair is so prevalent. And that's how Hot Combs on a Saturday Night became the 7 Daughters of Dupree, because of my agent. Once we signed, he was like, yeah, so you got to change the title. And I was like, no. Like, I loved my first title so much. I was like, it's the blackest thing I could ever think of, because I wanted to write the blackest book ever. Like, that was literally how I thought of it. And he was like, yeah, but this book is more literary. It's sweeping. It's generational. It's this, it's that. And so he had been brainstorming some ideas. And something he said when we were on that call made me blurt out the 7 Daughters of And here we are.
Nice. And thank you for reading the prologue and the first chapter because it's so easy to get hooked, but also I feel like you wrote this book for me because one, my paternal grandmother was my hairdresser for a long time. I have memories of getting my hair done before Easter Sunday. Two, I've been to those beauticians where you have to go through the back, knock on the screen door a certain amount of times to get in, to go in the basement, and they're like cooking fish dinners upstairs and all that stuff. Like I related to this so much. And then recently I was able to identify my first enslaved ancestor, and it's only six generations away. So I was just like, it was so easy to get hooked into this book because it's so relatable. And I'm imagining other readers feel that way too. And I think that's another reason why this book is doing so well, because you've been able to hook people in either because they can relate to the story or how you've outlined the characters' journeys. Like, I'm giving you your flowers tonight, trust me, because this book is so well written.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Both of my grandmothers, my maternal and paternal grandmothers, were beauticians. My mother is one of four girls. They all know how to do somebody's hair and do a roller set. So I've gone to many a kitchen and basement beautician on the block, elsewhere. Like, the first time, whenever, like, I used to work in television, so like when you leave a job like that, it tends to be transient. So whenever I would move to a different city, my first order of business after like getting my apartment together was figuring out who was going to do my hair, like who's doing my hair, and then where's the braid shop. Like, those are the first orders of business.
Yes. So the next question comes from, so I love the coming of age narrative. I love it so much. And another reason why I can relate to this book, Tati and I would have been around the same age. I was born in the latter half of 79. And so I would have been coming of age around the same time as Tati. So I'm able to relate to her a lot. So the Seven Daughters of Dupree starts from Tati's point of view. Even though she's our protagonist, but I would love to know why start the book from Tati's point of view, and what does this prepare the reader to experience?
Oh, goodness. I mean, initially, in the initial conception of the book, I thought I was just going to follow Tati from 14 to 19, and follow her search for her father. That became unsustainable very quickly because she's 14 and is not doing enough, right? Like, she goes to school, she writes poetry, she runs track, and she helps out in the basement. That does not sustain an entire novel, at least not in my hands. Like, a YA writer or a middle grade writer would be able to tackle that, but then it would be a very different book, right? Um, and so I brought her to a certain point in the novel, and in the first draft, brought her to that point where she goes on her homecoming dance, and she comes back and she learns her father's name from her grandmother. And then in the first draft, I dropped Tati and then picked Nadia up and explored that entire relationship for several chapters, and then brought Tati back when she was 18, 19, that Thanksgiving scene and everything that happens in part three. Um, and so once I got the expanded version of the novel with all seven characters, I knew I wanted to start with Tati. One, because with it being a generational story and my mother being very big into genealogy, I have seen her research over the years. And in the 20 and 26 of it all, we're not learning about our family history and our family tree from the first generation to set foot on the soil to now. We are working backwards. So I wanted to work backwards in the novel. And I've read so many historical fiction books that are generational, that take you from the top to the bottom. And that's great. But I wanted to do something different, because that's not how we find out. It's not realistic that we're going to have all of this knowledge that's passed down generation to generation to generation. And so as a reader, you have more information at the end of the book than Tati or Nadia will ever have as characters in the story. And so that was one reason why I wanted to start with her, paying tribute to my mother, also because it always started with her. But then I also felt like I could show the gaps in the lineage and the history. And so as I was conceiving of each character and writing their stories, and I wrote their stories individually and then came back and put them together, there were places where there were parallels. So like, Tati always wanted to know her father, Emma always wanted to know her mother. Let's put those stories together. So you see the gap in knowledge between 1995 and 1870 or whatever. The women who were messing with men that they shouldn't have been. Well, that's Nadia and Juvie. Let's put those stories together, and you see the gaps, but also the parallels between 1980 and 1917, right? The women who learned to braid their hair by the spirit, that's Ruby and Nadia. Let's put their stories together so that you see that this is a family of women that there are certain cycles that are repeated. There are behaviors that are passed down. There are talents and gifts that are passed down. It's not all trauma. And they may not have any explanation or conception as to why, but as you read the book, you see it's there in the lineage. Like, this is their family. This is who they are. This is what they do.
Oh, so nice. So, speaking of the decades, the years and decades you've selected to be represented in the Seven Daughters of Dupree seems extremely intentional. What is the cultural significance of each of these decades, especially the 1990s and I'll say like the 1870s?
The 1990s, that's my own nostalgia. Like, I'm a South Side of Chicago girl through and through. I grew up in the 90s. Tati is technically older than I am. I was 9 in 95, not 14, but whatever, we won't dwell. But it's my nostalgia for my home. Like, I haven't lived in Chicago since I left for undergrad in 2004, and I had never written a book about Chicago for the most part. There's a little bit of Chicago in my self-published novel Adulting, where there's like this journalism conference that's in Chicago, loosely based off like NABJ, but it's happening in the context of the novel. And so there's a little bit of Chicago in that book, but not really like the Chicago of my youth. And so I wanted to have the city of my youth, the city that raised me, the city that made me, and all those cultural touchstones in those moments. It's like it's home for me. And so it's my own nostalgia there. I think because Tati's story of her not knowing her father was born out of my own complicated relationship with my own father, setting it in the city where I was from and giving Tati my stomping grounds and my interiority and my emotionality, even though she is not me, because I grew up with my father and do know who he is, and she completely does not, allowed me access and freedom into her character that was lived in. As far as the year 1870, or even 1860 with the enslaved ancestor, I knew I didn't want to go too far back into slavery because, one, when I first conceived this novel, it wasn't historical fiction. Well, I mean, I guess maybe the 90s are historical fiction, but in my mind, it wasn't historical fiction in this way. It also wasn't a novel that was dealing with chattel slavery. And as much as I don't think about readers when I'm writing, I did then, because I know people are like, oh, I don't want another slave book, right? I don't want another slave story. And so I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, if I'm going to do this, I'm only going to do it once, which is why the enslaved ancestor story is at the end. It is not braided with any of the other characters. And I only wanted to go back to 1860. One, I was obsessed with the stories of the Clotilda at the time that I was writing, because they had found the ship in 2019. And so I was like reading all the books and watching all the documentaries and listening to all the podcasts about it and about that discovery and everything that happened in Africa Town and all of the descendants. So I was obsessed with that. And then also because I know Black people first show up on the census in 1870. Before that, we're searching for property records. So that's why that's that specific time period, the very end of chattel slavery, the beginning of the Civil War. I mean, in those last chapters, there's like the succession has already happened. Alabama has seceded from the Union, and there's talk about what's coming, what's happening. And then we see in 1870 with Evangeline and Emma, and Evangeline says something like, they could, like, freedom hasn't been that long. They could fight another war and take it away. And so I wanted to have that conversation there.
And speaking of Evangeline, my next question. Evangeline carries a unique story and represents a lot that happened to Black women during that time. What inspired this character?
Ooh, she showed up. She just showed up. Like, I don't know if there was an inspiration for her. She just kind of showed up. And then the thing she said was like, okay, well, she's not really originally from America. She's Caribbean, because she talks about Haints and Hyges and Duppies. which is very much Caribbean folklore around funerary rites. Her knowledge of roots and herbs, and also of birthing and being a midwife and all those things. Like, she showed up as the guardian that Emma needed and the mother she wished she had had. And I just ran with it.
Oh my gosh, so brilliant. So speaking of like all of these moments in history, so I have a pretty meaty question coming up. As generational saga, the story spans almost 2 centuries across various moments in history and explores themes like mother-daughter relationships, colorism, beauty rituals, the impacts of slavery, family secrets, and legacy. One very prominent theme across all 7 generations is agency. Can you share with us, without giving away the book, how agency and resilience show up across the many generations in the book, especially given each generation's unique circumstance?
So earlier I mentioned that the way that I thought of each storyline was as the women's turning points. What in their life happened to them, or did they decide on their own, that completely changed their life, and they had to then deal with it. And from my experiences and even some of my friends, I realized that for a lot of women, excuse me, Black women perhaps specifically, but a lot of women in general, our biggest life changes have to do with who we're partnered with and whether or not we decide to mother. And those can be life-changing decisions, and are. And so in thinking of their turning points that way, that is how I really looked at what they were going to do with their lives. And so, I can't have a book about daughters and not have fathers in the book, because you kind of need them to make the babies. but, but they were, in a way, I say they were in the way, because I wanted to talk about these women. I wanted to talk about, what does it look like when you try to pass for white and your ruse comes to an end because you have a dark child? And then how do you raise that child knowing that you blame her for ruining your life? What does that look like? What is the agency there? Do you have any? Because like Juby left under the threat of death. She didn't step off the front porch for years. What does your life look like? And then knowing that you are shunned by your mother your entire life, what does it look like for you to receive love? And then what do you do with it? So, Ruby had a very nice summer on the beach. She had a good hot girl summer on the beach, okay? Nadia, I think we see, she's down bad when she meets Tati's father. She's looking for love. She's searching for it. She has a mother who has put so much on her as a firstborn girl, and she's not in a great place. And then she gets pregnant by this man who we now know is married, because I read that line in the reading, so it's not a surprise that she's pregnant for this married man, right? And now she has a decision to make. If I keep this baby and raise this baby, what does our life look like, right? Same thing for Gladys. When Gladys lands in and on the train with her husband Eugene, she has a choice to make. Do I talk about what happened here? Do I bring my children back here to visit? Or do I leave everything behind? So they all have choices. Even the enslaved ancestor in her second to last chapter, where she says, I go too. And she's making a choice. All of them have experienced something where they have had to choose what it is that they want next for their life. And it's in that choosing that their agency and their autonomy is flexed, for better or for worse.
So you have a journalism background, and it's kind of clear because it feels like you interviewed each of these characters to dig deep into their interiority. What
And
was the
did.
Yes.
And did.
Yes. Can you share a little bit more about the research and writing process of the Seven Daughters of Dupree?
Yeah. So I'll go back, when we did our first interview for Mardi Gras Indians, I had said then that, like everything that I have done previously or am working on presently informs whatever I'm going to do next. That is so very true for the Seven Daughters of Dupree. Seven Daughters of Dupree. One of like I always call myself a lazy try hard. Like I want to try really hard, but I want to do it the laziest way possible. So like I research as I go. And so sometimes that will take me away from the page and like down a rabbit hole, but I generally research as I go. However, for this book particularly, the historical stories, as I said, part of it is inspired by the story of the Clotilda slave ship and the history of Africatown and Mobile in Alabama. The other part of it is inspired by where I live here in Jacksonville, Florida. There is the Kingsley Plantation and American Beach, which are historical sites, and they're connected. And I wrote an extended essay on the Bitter Southerner about American Beach in 2020. And that story just kind of stayed with me. And so the story really quickly, for those who don't know, is Anna Kingsley was kidnapped from Senegal in the late 1790s. She was first brought to Cuba, where she was bought by a man named Zephaniah Kingsley. So, there's a nod to his name in the novel. Zephaniah Kingsley brings Anna Kingsley to Fort George Island in Jacksonville. When she arrives at about 13, 14 years old, she's already pregnant for him. She has 4 children for him. She is acknowledged as his wife, even though he was married to like a white lady as well. He eventually emancipates her. She emancipates her children and other family members. And Kingsley Plantation then becomes like a safe haven during the Civil War for enslaved people who have escaped. So Kingsley Plantation is still standing. The house, the barn, the kitchen, the quarters, the stables, it is still standing. It is a preserved historical site. Anna Kingsley's great-granddaughter was a woman named Mary Sammis. She married Florida's first Black millionaire, a man named Abraham Lincoln Lewis, who ran the Afro-American Life Insurance Company in the 1930s. He and his business partners in the 1930s, so in the middle of the Great Depression, bought 200 acres of land just north of Jacksonville in what is now Nassau County and called it American Beach. And from about 1935 to 1964, Black people from across the country, from as far north as New York to as far west as Texas, would come to American Beach and summer there the way people are now summering on the Vineyard, okay? It was a thing. Ray Charles performed there. James Brown performed there. Zora Neale Hurston would go there. Langston Hughes would go there. It was a thing to do and a place to be. And so I'm paying tribute to that history that I had already done the research for and written the essay about in 2020. That is some of the history that goes into Land's End and the Seven Daughters of Dupree. So there's that piece. What was the other part of your question? Oh, the writing process?
The writing process. Mm-hmm.
So like as I mentioned the different inspiration points. So it really started with Tati, and then realizing that when she became unsustainable, writing Nadia. And so I wrote all of Tati, and then I wrote all of Nadia, and I jumped back and finished with Tati. So like that was the structure in the beginning. And then as the other characters came to me and I realized I was going to do this expanded version, I was like, well, I'll just, like, again, lazy try hard. I don't want to write an entire book with just these characters, because then I still have to put it together with this first part. So I'll just write them as stories. This is what I'm telling myself, right? And I was like, okay, we have 7 women, so it'll be like 7 chapters for each woman, right? Not too much. And like, I'm not a short story writer, so that to me was short. And so I wrote Gladys's story first. I really did write 7 chapters for Gladys. But then by the time I got to Ruby, might have been 5. And then Juvie might have had 4. And then Emma and the enslaved ancestor only had 3 chapters apiece. But what was great about it was that Gladys was the hardest character for me to unlock, because it was like I knew what happened to her, but she didn't want to tell me. So like, this is like when you talk about, did I interview my characters? Me trying to interview Gladys, and she's looking at me like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, you already know. Why do I have to say anything to you, right? And so, but what happened with her is that because all of the other women are in her scenes, I heard their voices very clearly. And so once I was able to unlock Gladys and all the other women being there, I heard them. So then once I started to write their stories, I knew what was going to happen. So like that line in Gladys's section where it's like, they're taking up the same sides in the old argument. I hadn't written the old arguments yet, but I knew that what they were going to be. And so Emma's voice was very clear. What Juby would say was very clear. How Ruby felt about it was very clear because I knew what their storylines were. I was just writing them backwards. And so I literally wrote them Gladys and then Ruby and then Juby and then Emma and then the enslaved ancestor. And then I opened a brand new document, opened all the other documents as well, and literally cut them one to one to one. So that's where those parallels are. We start with Tati's birthday, and then the next chapter is Emma never had a birthday. And then, Tati's going on this train trip. We have Gladys coming on the train. Nadia is thinking about doing hair. We have Ruby, who learns how to do hair, who is messing with this man. We have Juby and Nadia together. And it was difficult because, like, once I wrote the individual stories for each of the women, like they had gone really quiet on me. Like I said, I could hear them, I could see them. They went really quiet on me. I was like, oh no, you guys got to come back. And so I remember I would sit in the mornings and I would write between 5 and 6:15 in the morning, when my daughter would sleep after like her last feeding and before I had to wake up my son for school. And so at that time in the morning, I would sit, I would cut, I would either be writing the stories, or once I was putting everything together, I would, take this section from here, work through it, make sure that all the tenses were correct, all the point of views were right, and then go to the next section. And then once it was time for me to like stop for the day, I like just leave myself like a little note with like bullet points of, okay, this is next, this is next, this is next, this is next. And if I didn't know what was next, I was like, okay, y'all, what's next? Like just ask the question out loud to the ancestors, to the spirits, to all who were listening, what comes next? Because baby needs help. And that's how the book was written.
Yes. So, and I'm going to make sure to put this in the show notes. And the train might be past. I live 2 houses down from the train. In previous interviews, including on your own podcast, Black and Published, you talked about your beautiful relationship with your editor, one in which saying that it was like a match made in heaven. I would love for you to talk about the relationship with your editor and how she walked you through this process.
Oh gosh. So I guess we'll start with the acquisition of the novel. I signed with my agent in March of 22, and he asked me to do a couple revisions aside from changing my title. He asked me to do a couple revisions, which we did in April, and then we went on submission May 2nd. And so that first week of May, he was doing his thing, sending emails. And I think by that Friday, we had one editorial call set up for the next week on Tuesday. And then by that Monday, we had 9 calls set up for the week. I did the first call on Tuesday, and then my second call was with Allison on Wednesday. And we talked for about an hour, or about like 10 in the morning. And if you listen to the episode with her on my podcast, you can tell she's very effusive. She's very she gives lots of energy, and she's very effusive. She's very dramatic, and I love her for it. And so she was talking to me about it, and I was taking notes as she was talking to me, and she was asking me questions about like, what about this and what about this, and would you be willing to do this, and just talking me through some plot points that weren't as clear, or that I needed to make stronger in the book. And then we got off the call, and I want to say by like 2, she had made a preemptive offer. And so then, yes. And then she and my agent went back and forth about the money, and I stayed out of their business and let him negotiate on my behalf. And I want to say by like 6, the deal was done. And and also all of my other editorial calls that were scheduled for the week were canceled except one. And it was with another team at Simon & Schuster, with the flagship, because Allison is with Scout Press, which is the imprint of Gallery Books. And so I had to call that Thursday with the flagship team from Simon & Schuster. And then after that call, my agent was like, okay, so who do you want to work with? Your money's not going to change. You just have to decide which editor you want to work with. And I was like, okay, well, these are champagne problems that I've never experienced. What do I do? And so I was like, he's like, and we don't want to let the decision go over the weekend, or we need to set up more calls. And I was like, okay, I'll let you know by noon on Friday. And so for me, it was Allison who started everything. She was the one who had made the preemptive offer. And the backstory to this is that she read the novel over the weekend that she received it. And when she finished it, she texted my agent or emailed him and was like, we're going to lunch on Monday. And then they went to lunch that Monday. So like, because she was so excited and had to have it. And she tells a story about, really, really wanting the book and like going to bat for it, which she did. I am eternally grateful to her. And so for me in the decision, I'm a very loyal person. And so as I was thinking about the two editorial teams, the feedback that I received, the kind of questions that I was asked on the calls with both teams, it really became at the end of it, I wouldn't even be in this position with this amount of money on the table for me if it weren't for her. So it has to be her. And the funny thing about it, or like the cosmetic thing about it all, is that once we decided to work together, or once I had made the decision that she would be my editor, and I had told her on our very first call that I had submitted for that contest for Gallery Books in 2021, she was like, "Oh, when we talked maybe that Friday, so 2 days later, once I had made my decision, she was like, Nikesha, I went back and I looked at that contest, at those results. I said yes to this manuscript 2 years ago, but the other two editors on the project had passed. And so it had to have two editors say yes if it was to go through to the next round. And she was the only one who did. So we were literally meant to be together and meant to work together on this book. And she was amazing. She always liked to say that she put my book on Ozempic and put it on a diet because it came in at 500 pages. And so there was, like, Tati had more scenes with her love interest Xavier that got cut down to just the homecoming dance. It's fine. So, if we get our mini series, maybe we'll get to see Tati and Xavier out and about being young and in love or whatever. She had me expand the relationship between Toya and Nadia, the friendship or lack thereof between them, to really understand why they were beefing as much as they were. And then just tightening up some other things. There were a couple chapters that I ended up cutting, but we're still able to leave the spirit of them in there. And so she was awesome. And as she said on my podcast, she was like, my job is to make it as if I was never there. Like, a reader should read the book and they should never know I was here.
We all need an Allison, like, just, and I love that this was your experience with the Big Five. Like, yeah, which I haven't finished watching episode, but I did watch the episode of you and Allison. I forgot the series, but it was posted on Simon and Schuster's site.
The
And
right
that's the
reasons.
Yeah, and that's the interview that I'm gonna post to the description box here. Because the first 10 minutes, like, just like the way Allison glowed while talking to you, and just I was like, I gotta ask a question about this relationship because she admires you so much. And so I was just like, thank you for being such an amazing champion of this book.
She really, really was. Like, I can't say
Yeah.
enough good things.
Nice. So I have two more questions for you. So prior to having our guests on Black Writers Read, we asked them why they write. Here's what you offered. I write to write myself seen. I am endlessly curious about Black women and the lives we lead. And as much as I read to learn about us, I write to learn about us, but first, me. The page allows me a place to express thoughts, feelings, actions, arguments I've never explored out loud. It is freedom. I feel grateful and privileged to be an author during this time, and I honestly feel a way about working and writing at this level is a privilege or something I should be grateful for. Sociopolitically, it is really difficult to be a Black writer right now, especially given the subjects I write about. The world I sold my book in and the world it debuted in are not the same, but I'm glad people are reading and recommending it. And for that, I am truly grateful. I don't know any other way. As Black authors today, what do we owe our readers and audiences? And then what do we owe ourselves as cultural contributors?
Ooh, we owe ourselves the truth. We owe ourselves honesty. We owe our readers the truth, and we owe them honesty. That is the only way this works. Like, even if you are writing paranormal romantasy, there is some level of honesty in that book with the characters who look like centaurs or whatever the case, with the fairies, with the E. whatever it is, there is some level of truth in these books and in these words and in these worlds that are crafted, whether they are rooted in history and the past, whether they are rooted in the future and are speculative, whether they are rooted in fantasy and dabble in magic. There's always a level and a kernel of truth. And I think we owe that to ourselves and we owe that to the readers, that honesty. Like, if you cannot be honest on the page, at least for me, and maybe this is just me, how can you be honest with your loved ones and your beloveds and your kindred out loud? Like, I don't know, like, not everybody journals, but like, if you cannot be honest with yourself, whether you're journaling or meditating or praying or whatever that form of solitude is where you like really get at yourself, you can't be honest in those moments. How can you be honest with anybody else? And so for me as a writer, that is what I owe to myself and to my reader. And I hope that that comes through.
Yes, thank you for that. And lastly, Nikesha Elise Williams, what is next for you and how can the Black Writers Read community support you on this journey?
Buy my book. Buy my book. Buy my book. Tell your mama and them to buy my book. Tell your cousins and them to buy my book. But if you cannot buy the book, request it at your local library. And I am being very serious about that. I do understand that the gas prices are high, the inflation is up, and that $30 on a hardback is just not where it's at, friend. I get it. I get it. I do. So if you cannot buy the book, get it from the library, request it on Libby, all the things. What's next for me? I am working on a second draft of something. It is a contemporary novel that looks at a specific time period in recent history and exploring how we survived a crisis. That's what I got.
Nice. And folks, this book is available also as audiobook, ebook, and as Nikesha said, please support your public library. If you can't afford it, purchase it there. I would say definitely if you can, get the hard copy. Get the hard copy if you can, because of the beautiful, oh my God, the beautiful family tree that's on the inside. Like
Yes.
it is. Who was your illustrator? Because also the cover page is so gorgeous.
So the cover is actually a painting by this artist named Jim Musil. He's on Instagram. And so the his painting is really just this beautiful scenery with the farmhouse in the back. And then when they sent it in with like the type with the font and just the farmhouse, there was no woman and there were no birds. I was like, it's Southern. It doesn't have any soul yet. And so I was like, and this is kind of where industry and marketing like kind of come into play, because obviously it would have been easy to do the cover like the UK cover with the woman with the braids, or to do something with a face. But putting a black face on a book comes with its own kind of connotations, perhaps. And so I was like, okay, I can understand why you don't want to put someone facing forward. But if this is going to be the cover that I have to choose from, put Gladys on the road in that white dress walking down the street. Like, just put, like, we don't have to see your face. Put Gladys on the road. And then my editor, and then Allison was like, and I'm gonna get you some birds. And I was like, you do that. Go ahead, give me some birds. But I want to see Gladys walking down this dirt road in that white dress. And they came back and they did. And I love it.
And also, and I hope it's okay to say this, because she's a writer that I admire a lot. I love that your front cover has a quote from Honore Jeffers, because her book, The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, speaks very. You can read it side by. Well, I don't know if I recommend reading it side by side because both books are long, but they complement each other so much. So I love that she was the quote that's on the front of your book.
Thank you.
Yes. So Nikesha, thank you so much. Yes, I got it under an hour because I've been talking to people. We've been going like hour and a half. And like I remember earlier today I was watching the Brown Girl Collective Book Club talk, and she went like an hour and 14. She was like, I'm going to let you go. Because even preparing for tonight, and I wonder if Ms. Clark has some of those same issues, but I was trying really hard to pare down the questions because I literally can have you here all night because there's so much to talk about this book. So I hope book clubs continue to engage with this work and talk with you about it because there's so much to talk, like so much so. And I don't say this about a lot of text, but this is a book I might teach, like, because it's just, yeah, it's just so rich and engaging. Like the things I look for in a text include not only is it rich, engaging, have amazing character development, has kind of a coming of age story, but lastly, like the character dynamics and how history is represented. Like I look for a lot of different things in books that I teach because my books have to be in conversation with different things. And this is definitely a book that I would like to teach. And I feel like colleges should be teaching this book because of just the richness and the possibilities that exist in the book.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That means the world. Thank you.
So, Nikesha, thank you so much for being on this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you can stick around for just like a couple of minutes, I just want to check in with you. I'm going to wrap up and then I'll check in. And then we could be back to our evening. So thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us this evening for episode 27 of season 6 of Black Writers Read. I will be back on Friday, June 26th at 6 p.m. to chat with Dr. Rachel Larea about her book, Black Capitalists, and I'll be closing out the season next Friday, July 3rd. Support Black Writers Read by subscribing to my YouTube channel, Nicole Young Martin, where many of you are joining us from today. Also, you can find me on audio podcasts. I am available on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, and Amazon. While you're there, drop a review and subscribe, as these things help people to find me. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Again, the algorithm, you are helping to create pathways for my sustainability, as this platform is independently produced and self-funded. Please, 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 please help sustain this award-winning platform. Visit blackwritersread.com to learn more about the podcast and my work. So thank you all for spending your evening with us, and more importantly, for ensuring that Black writers continue to matter. I will see you on Friday.